we are live streaming for real this time. I hope. Yes. All right, we are live officially. All right, so we'll just get started in just a second, folks. Let me record. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another book site episode, and this is going to be a jam-packed show tonight. So we are going to be talking about a lot of things, and we're actually going to be reversing the order just because I have a surprise for you guys, and I just can't wait to hold it. So we're just going to go ahead and start off. Let's go ahead and talk about, I actually have a new co-host, so I really don't like talking to myself. It gets really boring. So I've actually invited my friend Foster Brown. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Yep, this is Foster, and he actually is a blind IRS agent from Houston, Texas. And we're going to go ahead and do an interview with him. So we'll move the news up to later. So you're going to have to watch out later for the news. So that means you're going to have to stay around longer. I know. You're like, gosh, dang it. I just want to hear the news. Nope, you're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the interview with Foster. And if you guys are in chat, please say hi. It's been a very interesting time because I had to create a new YouTube channel so that Foster and I could be able to have a podcast without trying to do it on my personal channel and dealing with all the logistics for that. But if you guys are in chat, go ahead and say hi. If you have questions, let me know, and let's get started. So, Foster, can you please tell me about yourself, where you came from, and just kind of some information for the viewers?
Okay, so my name's Foster Brown. Originally, I was born and raised in California, and I spent most of my time there in California, and received my degree in mathematics back in 2000. 2000. I think it was like 2005. Yeah, something like that. No, yeah. No, I'm sorry. 2008. Excuse me, 2008. So I received my degree in mathematics, and I knew for a long time that I wanted to work for the IRS. I didn't know what capacity because I didn't know what all the different types of positions they had, and my rehab counselor sent me some information about a training program that they have for people that were blind and visually impaired like myself. And once I saw the description of the position, I went ahead and said, hey, sign me up. So I went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and I trained there for 4 months. And once I completed that program, I was hired on permanently with the IRS. So my employment was contingent upon me completing that program. So I started out with the service in Oakland, California. So I worked there 6 years before relocating here to Texas. So yeah.
Why did you relocate to Texas? Because there's many other states that you can go.
True, but my wife had lived in Houston previously before we met.
Okay.
And she used to talk about it all the time after we were married. So I knew she wanted to come back here. And personally, I was interested in a change of environment myself. So yeah, so that's why I came to Houston.
So basically you came to Houston because of your wife.
Yep.
And you want to change environment. Yeah, because there's so many other Texas cities, right? Texas is growing like crazy now, and there's like so many options.
Right.
So it's always interesting.
Right. Yeah. We had thought about Dallas, but then Dallas, I don't know, Dallas was I've been to Dallas before, and it's not really my cup of tea. So Houston seemed like a good fit.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. And then, a lot of people basically are like, I don't want to work for the IRS. I despise the IRS. What is so appealing for you when you want to work with the IRS? Because that's not something I usually hear.
Well, I used to watch my dad do his own taxes,
Ah,
and so he would, I would go with him to the library, and he would, pick up all his forms and whatnot, and um, um, he would prepare his taxes himself and mail them off on April 15th every year.
was he a tax professional or was he just,
No,
a
he wasn't a tax professional, but he had a JD, a Juris Doctorate. So
okay,
he he didn't he didn't pass the bar, but since he had his JD, he used it to mediate for the company he worked for. So he worked as a
okay.
mediator.
Was it a
Um,
tax related company or?
no, no, state run.
Okay.
Part of this employment system. Like how Texas we have TWC.
Yep.
In California, they have what's called EDD, Employment Development Department. So
Okay.
what he did was if people had an issue and they wanted to see a mediator or they asked for an appeal, then he would be the one to mediate um, those some of those cases.
Awesome. So
Mhm.
have you been blind your whole life or have you been blind like a certain portion? Because I asked because when your dad, when you observed him doing taxes, I was just curious.
No, my sight's been like this all my life, so I've been low
Okay.
vision all my life. So
Do you want to kind of explain what that is for my viewers?
sure. So it's not that I'm totally without sight. I can actually see. It's just I have to be real close up on things to see them, or otherwise use some type of equipment to magnify what I'm looking at. So if I'm on a computer, I use software that magnifies the screen so that I can easily see it. If I'm out and say going to a restaurant, then I'll either use my cell phone or a portable magnifying device to enlarge the menu so I can see what's on the menu, read on the menu. Or if I'm trying to see distance, I have a monocular, kind of like you see a lot of golfers use monoculars to
Yep.
when they're looking down the fairway to see where the hole is and stuff and see what obstacles. So I have a monocular that's specifically for people that's low vision.
And then can you drive or not? Or no?
No, my vision's not correctable to drive.
Okay.
I have met some people though whose vision was correctable enough where they could drive, but nah, that's not been the case for me.
Okay. So when you work at the IRS and you're, helping customers, what kind of things, I guess, like, do you do basically in terms of, are you on the phone or, how do you service your customers?
No, we're face to face, so we're in the taxpayer assistance center. So we're face to face with customers. Um, so we do educate them as far as their tax obligations, or educate them as to why they owe. Whether it was they didn't pay enough tax in, or they got audited and they didn't respond to the audit, or if they do receive an audit letter, we go through it with them and show them what they need to send in, because a lot of times it's a lot of information, so they don't quite understand. So that's why they may come to us to get information on that.
Okay. Is your primary duty with the individual taxpayer or the businesses and corporations?
Uh, Primarily, the taxpayer assistance centers are primarily for individual taxpayers. There are a few business things we handle, such as if somebody wants to submit their business return, like 1120S,
Yep.
1065. Trust fund recovery taxes are supposed to be filed online. So
Okay.
we really don't receive those unless someone is um, behind, if they're behind on filing and they need to file. But we don't really see those because, like I said, those are supposed to be paid online, and also they're supposed to be filed online.
That makes sense. And then, like I said, I'm sorry, folks, we're going all over the place, but I had a list of questions, so and they all got scrambled. So that's kind of how we're rolling today. So when you got your degree in math, what were the reasoning behind that?
So early on, after I graduated high school, people were like, "Oh, Foster, you're good in math. You should major in mathematics, stuff like that." And yeah, I majored in mathematics, and it was a totally new experience because you know I didn't realize what there was beyond calculus. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, so and I did that, and I had at one point thought about computer science because a lot of people with mathematics, a lot of people do dual majors. So they may do
Okay.
math and computer science. They may
That
do
makes sense. Yep.
physics and computer science, or some of them may just do, depending on what university you go to, some may do applied mathematics. So it just depends. But a lot of computer science majors, they do dual majors because usually the courses, except for the computer science part, the a lot of the general courses and some of the courses that you need in a major are the same for mathematics. So on the low, your lower courses. So yeah, so that's
Okay.
how I end up majoring in mathematics. So
So is the only reason, or one of the only reasons, that you were interested in finance is because you saw your dad's taxes?
not so much finance, but taxes. Yeah,
Okay.
because of him doing his own taxes. And then, as you get older and you start working and you start having to do your own taxes, it's like, this is just mathematics. That's all it is,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, and, before I worked for the IRS, I actually, would help some of my friends from time to time, help them file their returns and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And how was that experience for you? Like helping your friends file their returns? Like, did you, of course, I don't know what was it like back then, if you used kind of software, can you kind of explain that?
Well, yeah. So I would, show them some of the software options that were free because a lot of them were low income. So
Okay.
I showed them some of the software options and how they could go to the IRS website to see what uh, options they had. Uh, but some people still opted to go to a preparer because they would do a refund anticipation loan. So
Okay.
the preparer would go ahead and whatever their refund was, like say if their refund was 3,000 and they charged them 300, they would go ahead and give them 2,700. And so
Yeah, that makes sense.
some people want to hurry up and get their money when really if you e-file, what's only 3 weeks tops to get you know, refund. So
And of course, there's probably circumstances that impact that, I'm sure, right? Because it's not just always 3 weeks.
yeah, well, some people, I think for some people it was just they wanted to hurry up and get their money because all this time they've been kind of what's a few, in my opinion, just what's a few more weeks to get
I
your
know.
whole check as opposed to paying somebody. But it's nothing against preparers, but most people only have one job. So, if you have one job, it's not really complex. So just
Yeah, and
take.
that's very interesting because we have a podcast audience mostly of preparers. So do you kind of
Mm.
want to go into that a little bit more? because I'm sure they probably know, right? I'm sure as preparers, y'all know, but a lot of your clients are probably not just the one job ordeal, right? They have many different things going on. So do you kind of want to explain, what your
Well, some
thought
people
process behind
do.
it?
Yeah, some people do have, especially I know living in Houston, a lot of people have like side hustles
Yep.
where they're doing self-employment and cutting grass,
I think it's more
selling
common and more you think.
selling more, selling other products like they may have a sell on eBay, Amazon, like that. Uh, uh, they may do e-commerce. That's the word I'm looking for. Uh, so then, yeah, they definitely need assistance as far as preparing their returns because, um, you know, they they uh, they forget. I think a lot of people forget that you still have to pay taxes even if you're self-employed,
Oh, yes.
and they they uh, they don't seek out assistance. So they could seek out assistance, before the year ends, as opposed to waiting until it's time to file the taxes and then come to find out you owe $3,000. You could have avoided that by paying in estimated tax payments.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, that you kind of mentioned that because I think there's a lot of times when people don't even know to file estimated tax payments. And also
Mhm.
that a lot of times, like if you don't have a preparer, right? I'm sure, my audience understands this, right? If you don't have a preparer and you inherit a client who's never paid estimated taxes, they could get all these penalties. And I think that's something else too.
And and I think for far as for prepares, I would say if you're not doing it, I would say it's really, if you're not educating the people on this, I would say you should, because then that adds an extra element and builds people's trust.
Do you mind repeating what you just said? Because your internet
Trusting
cut
your
out.
your expertise. I was saying that as a preparer, you should educate people on estimated taxes, uh, but because not only is it necessary for them to know, but then also you would develop a trust with that person. Because if you take the time to break down to people what they should do, show them the schedule, how often they need to make payments, and uh, um, assist them in making those payments, then you can extend, instead of just working just the tax season, like from January to April, you can actually
Mhm.
extend what you do year round.
Tax planning. Yes, very important.
Right. You know.
Now, yeah, on that whole subject and on, clients and all these other things, you mentioned earlier that you were talking about low income, right? You've got a lot of friends or others who are on low income. And I'm sure as preparers, you face this situation where you want to take on a client, but you know that they can't pay your fee. And I think,
Mhm.
of course, there's a lot of different situations where that could happen. And of course, there's also a lot of resources, right? Including VITA or any of those. Do you have any experience with like VITA or any of those other resources?
I've met people since I worked for the IRS that volunteer during VITA every year. I haven't volunteered myself for it, but I have met a lot of people that work for the IRS that volunteer and do that. And then, of course, like here in Houston, you have what is it, Baker Ripley, which is part of United Way, where they like receive grant money so they can help people prepare their taxes as low income. So uh, those are the most common things that I know of where people can actually get free assistance as far as preparing their returns.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, if you want to know more about, your city, right? Because we're only covering stuff in Texas and specifically in Houston in that regard. You can check the websites, right? Is there some links on the IRS website, or where should people go?
Well, yeah. If you go to the website in irs.gov and you want to find out about tax preparation per your state, you can. There's links on there. The best way I would say is to just put it in the search box and then search and see what's available, because it also lists, as prepares, your information should come up too when they're looking for preparers locally.
Yep, in that directory. Yeah.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, about how that thing works. And of course, if you're a good preparer, you should have the licensing and certification in order to, make sure that you can show up in that directory, because that can really get you a lot of leads for
Hmm.
your tax practice. And I think in a future episode, we're actually going to be talking about fraudulent tax preparers. So we'll be doing that in a few weeks, but I don't want to do that in anything now because we got a lot of other questions to cover. So back to your IRS center, can you kind of tell me some services that you don't do? Because I'm sure as preparers, if you've got a client who's close to one of those centers and you are just not sure, you're like, this would be better in person. Can you kind of clarify to my audience what would be better in terms of, like what can you do or what can't you do at the centers?
Well, so, um, well, for one, you all know that IRS does not assist in preparing taxes anymore, because you used to you years ago you could set a plan, set an appointment to come in and we would help you prepare your taxes free.
Really?
They stopped that service back in 2014.
Really? Why is that? Do you
Right.
know?
Um, just it well, one, if you think about the number of preparers that are out there, as
Yep.
well as the amount of uh, assistance that taxpayers can get, that you know it's free to them. It's really not necessary for us to do that. There's other issues. There's plenty other issues for us to deal with
Makes
that they
sense.
yeah. So another issue is if your client gets a letter that they're being audited. The only thing we can do is the same thing that you should be doing, which is going through the letter, reading what's being asked for, what changes that we're proposing. For example, if your client receives a, a letter saying that they're going to be audited and you need to send in uh, proof of relationship, such like the birth certificate for the dependent, um, uh, information about the EIC. So
Hmm.
read through the letter with them, because as the preparer, you can actually represent that person, with form 2848, or more so with the 8821. So, like if you're a CPA, then you could go ahead and do the 2848, because basically we can talk to you as if we're talking with the taxpayer. If you're 8821, which is where the taxpayer gives you information, taxpayer information authorization, where they give you authorization to discuss, issues on the account, you can do that as well. But if they receive an audit letter, just take your time, go through it with them, you know, tell them what stuff they need to send, um, and uh, uh, help them out. Because the thing of it is remember, your name is on that that tax return too as well. So it kind of reflects back on you as the preparer.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think, guys, that's just common sense. You guys are preparers, right? You guys got into this field knowing that some of your clients may be audited. So instead of just saying, sitting on your butt all day, and, of course, I don't know that anybody does this, but let's just get that out of the way. Help your clients, because that's what they're paying you for. And if they're not paying you, then you got another problem, right? But make sure that they're paying you, of course, and also make sure that you help them, because that's just really, really common courtesy. Okay, I got a few more questions for you. And again, if any of you are in chat, go ahead and let me know. I'm monitoring it. I don't see anything, but if you're in chat, I'd love to be able to take questions. But I got a couple more for you, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the news section. So I know that you mentioned, of course, the whole math degree, right? And you mentioned kind of why you wanted to do it and all that other stuff. Have you ever thought about, since you're actually working at the IRS, or you wanted to work at the IRS, what about accounting?
What was the last part you said?
I'm sorry, we have sirens. So why not accounting? Because you talk about math, you like math, but why don't you do accounting if it's more relevant for IRS?
Well, it depends on what you're doing at the IRS. So for what I'm doing, accounting is not necessary.
Okay.
If I would say was interested in becoming a tax compliance officer, a revenue agent, yeah, accounting definitely would be a must. But since I'm not doing either one of those, nor am I interested in doing either one of those, accounting is not necessary.
That's very interesting, because I think, the statement to take away from this is, if you want to work at the IRS, right? If you've ever thought about it, or if, somebody else that wants to work at the IRS, you want to kind of figure out what you want to do and then try to pick the correct degree. Is that kind of what I'm thinking you're trying to interpret?
Well, so it depends on what, like you said, it all depends on what you are doing. So for work, when you work in a taxpayer assistance center, you you don't need an accounting degree. It helps if you have any type of degree, because that shows that you have your a degree kind of shows that you are persistent, that you have some level of being able to reason and comprehend. So it helps if you have a degree, but there are people that, say get hired, that they have more so life experience, depends on what background they had. They may still be able to be hired for this position, or say like when you call on the telephone, you call the 1040 line.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily have to have a degree for that, because they're going to they're going to train you on what you need to know. And so you don't really need a bachelor's degree, and in some places you really don't need a degree at all. Uh, just maybe your life experience, or if you've had customer service experience or administrative experience like that, you could simply uh, you could simply qualify for a job just based on that experience. So
Yeah,
it
that's
just
really good to
depends.
know, because I
Hmm.
think a lot of people think that you need a bachelor in order to get in the IRS, and that's not necessarily true.
Right. And then there's positions where there's, so like for example, um, for TCOs and for revenue officers, you know, yeah, you have a team, but then on your team, you have a secretary. So for a secretary, you don't need a degree to be a secretary. The main thing they're looking at is if you can type, you know, at least 35, 40 words per minute. And if you are, and you have to just be organized, because there's stuff that you have to do repetitively. So you need to be organized and keep up with those things. So, there's other positions besides tax related positions, like working with taxes. So,
That is very good to know. So even if you don't like taxes, folks, that means that you could still make a contribution to the IRS. So I'm
right.
sure everybody who listens to my podcast likes taxes, but if you don't, you still have options.
Yeah. And if you really just want to see a list of all positions that are available at the IRS, then you can go to jobs.irs.gov, and you will find a list of all current jobs. And you can also find descriptions of jobs that may not even be listed at the current time.
And that will be in the show notes and the description. So I will definitely put that in there. Okay, so I think
And
that wraps
another
up the
thing,
oh, sorry.
oh, and then just one last point. Another thing too is the IRS also hires lawyers.
Oh,
So when we get to talk about fraud uh, in the upcoming, I can tell you a little bit more about that.
yeah, we'll definitely have a episode about that. Excuse me. So I think that wraps up the interview. Unless do you have any other things that you would like to tell viewers?
I'm just excited. I'm excited about joining in on this. Thank you for inviting me to come and join in.
Hey, no problem. And if you're wondering how we met, right, you're probably thinking, how did I meet this Foster? Well, we met at a American Council of the Blind Texas convention. And basically that is a blindness organization. You know, it's kind of like a consumer advocacy organization for the blind. There's two main ones out there, American Council of the Blind and National Federation of the Blind. So we actually met, we were literally talking in like what's called the hospitality room, where it's kind of everyone just kind of hanging out. I think we were talking finance for like, I don't know, a couple hours, weren't we?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we knew that
Finance,
it would be,
podcast,
yeah,
podcast,
we,
electronics, stuff like that. So yeah.
yeah, we knew it would be an instant success. So that's kind of how we met each other, if you're wondering that. But I think we're going to go on into the news because we've got a lot of that too. And I'm sure that Foster will have some interesting things to say about all that. Let's start off with the Drake Tax Seminar. So I went ahead and went to the Drake Tax Seminar. If you're not familiar with Drake, it's a software for preparers to prepare returns. And they are making their tour. So they have been going all over the United States. And today was Austin's turn. So basically, we had two different representatives from Drake. We had Stephen Drake and we had Izzy, I think that's his name. And they talked about all things Drake. They did a demo. We went to a hotel. We had some refreshments and some snacks and everything else. It was a pretty good experience. But what's very interesting is that there was only 11 people registered. And it got very, personal, which is great. I love attention, right? Not to be selfish, but, it's great when you can talk about, with the people that you're working with. It's just awesome. But after the presentation ended, actually was my favorite time because I got to talk to them about accessibility. And I think that's kind of where I want to, talk about, and you can kind of stop me at any time, Foster, if you have something to say. But I think that their commitment to accessibility is really good. Now, when I first got introduced to them, I talked to their sales rep, who kind of is one to collect leads, right? They don't really, travel, right? They're just kind of there to collect leads. And at that time, I was told that they don't like blind tax preparers and they don't even care. And of course, I'm thinking, all right, that's a slap in the face, but okay, whatever, right? I'll move on. I got an email a couple weeks ago that they said they're going to be in town. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I'm just going to go anyway. I'm glad I did because I learned about a whole bunch of different things that could make my life as a blind tax preparer easier. And I also got some valuable contacts from the sales reps who actually cover the state of Texas. So I just kind of want to talk about a couple features and maybe Foster, as someone who is low vision, we can kind of talk about those together. But the first thing that I want to talk about is something called Gruntwork. And of course, you're thinking, what the heck is that? It's a company that Drake bought. And basically what it does is it helps you to be able to import documents. Now, what I mean by import documents is I mean to be able to take your taxpayers' documents, 1099s, W-2s, etc., and import them into Drake. Now, what it does is it actually organizes them for you. And I think it's like 10 cents a minute, but it organizes them for you. And I say minute, I keep thinking audio, but I'm so used to dealing with audio transcription. 10 cents a page. Sorry. 10 cents a page. And basically it will help you organize the audio. Oh my gosh. I'll try that again. Helps you organize the documents, right? So you can literally flip through them and you can hit import, import, import. Of course, it's still not perfect because you still need to be able to check for errors. But the thing that I'm most really happy about is the human validation, which is $1.40 a minute. Oh my goodness gracious, this is laughable. $1.40 a page. And basically, the office people at Drake will help you to make sure that all the documents are good without any errors, or that there's really no issues in terms of the scanning. And I think that's really great for blind tax preparers, because I would hate to be sued on a incorrect number that I scanned from a W-2. I don't know about you, Foster, but if you were a blind tax preparer, if you did taxes, how would you feel about that, right? Where they can actually help you with that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the software is like a OCR program, right?
Yeah, it does. It does OCR through the Gruntworks, and then you can import it into Drake.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So it'll read the W-2, 1099, or whatever type of document they have. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it. And I think it's going to be very revolutionary. So that way I don't have to worry about missing numbers, right? Or missing different fields. I wish that they'd add more support for other things, such as like social security cards and ID cards, because I have to keep a record of those on file. But they said they might be adding those so we can make sure that they're OCR correctly. There's a lot of other things that are valuable from that seminar, but I've got a lot of other news that I got to cover, but I'll probably cover a lot of this later in other episodes if I think about it, and we'll kind of see how this progresses. But the main takeaway from the Drake seminar is that it was a very, very good seminar, and I learned a lot, and it just seems like their commitment to accessibility is really, really good. I just hope that they can deliver it, right? Because I just hope that what they tell me is actually what they're going to do. So we'll have to see on that one. So the next piece of news is a emerging news item that happened today. So I registered for a TXCPA expo that's going to be happening tomorrow. So I actually joined AICPA and TXCPA both last week, because if you remember that I'm going back to school for accounting and I hope to get my CPA. If you've not watched latest episode 9, you should go ahead and watch that, because I talk about being in school and I talk about all this other stuff and how I'm going to be starting school in August and yada, 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 and so forth. I go into all this, but basically I'm now part of AICPA and TXCPA. And as being part of that, I get to go to different expos, such as the CPE Expo tomorrow at the convention center. I can't remember the address, but either way, it's not really relevant, because if you want to know more about it and you're a member, just go check out the TXCPA event page. But I got a flattering email today, and I'm not going to really go through all of it because some of it has my name and information on it. And of course, I don't really want to share all my CPA numbers and things like that. But I'm going to kind of talk about some things that I found very interesting. So basically, they're going to be having a conference, like I said, and they have some very strict policies, which I thought were very interesting. And I kind of think that makes sure that, CPAs kind of feel like they're stuck in the 20th century. So I'll kind of explain. Basically, the email said, of course, that you need to turn your phone off, completely off, not just on airplane mode, not just on do not disturb, completely off. I can understand that, right? That's just kind of common sense. You're in a big meeting hall with a bunch of CPAs. That's fine. Then they go into about the laptop. They're like, you can't use your laptop other than using it for looking at materials and taking notes in a limited capacity. Like, okay, I don't know what that means. Basically, you can use your laptop, but the thing is that it may be looked at, or the internet access may be spotty, is what they said. So that's very broad, but okay. Then the next line, they said, we prefer that you handwrite your notes. I'm thinking, that's going to be impossible, but okay. Because, I don't want to just sit there and not take notes, because this is going to be a lot of valuable information. So I'm like, well, I'm going to bring my laptop, but I'm not going to really use it, because they said that, they don't really want any devices with sound in the room, which is understandable, right? And they also said that audio recording is prohibited. Under any circumstances, prohibited. It's like, wow, I feel like I'm going to an IRS hearing, right? Foster's like, wow, this is crazy. And it's like craziness. Oh my goodness gracious. So the other thing too is that, I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bring a braille display and be like, look, this is my version of handwriting, right? Because I'm going to at least try to mimic the rules as best as possible. It's a braille display that doesn't have any sound. So we're going to see how that goes. But I just thought it was very interesting. What are your thoughts about that, Foster? Does that kind of remind you of like an IRS hearing?
Well, I haven't actually been to like a IRS mediation, but I understand that them not wanting folks to be distracted.
Right.
I do understand that, but I mean, they act like it's top secret, like, when people come see the president and everybody has to leave their phones outside the Oval Office,
Right.
So I don't know why they're handling it like it's top secret. So I don't know. I don't understand the logic behind that.
Yeah, very interesting. It's like, wow, why are they doing this? But who knows? I'm still gonna go tomorrow, of course, but I'm gonna be, very careful. And of course, they're probably thinking, oh, blind person. So we'll see how I get. What the? I think there's some. Is there noise in your end, Foster? I'm hearing myself.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that.
No problem. So it's going to be very interesting tomorrow and see how everything goes, because what I think is going to happen is I'm going to be there and I'm going to be blind, and whether I get accepted or not, I'm going to learn the information. And I think me being a blind CPA, eventually, I'm going to have to break barriers one at a time. I think that's just how I'm going to have to do it, because I know of only like 2 blind CPAs in the country. I don't know of any more, but I only know 2. So, that means that I'm gonna have to be breaking a lot of barriers, and of course, their states have probably already been broken in. Like, I think there's one in not North Carolina. Where was I thinking about that? California and Pennsylvania, right? But Texas has never seen a blind CPA, to my knowledge. Now, if you know of anybody, let me know. If anybody does, because I'm trying to put together a blind CPA panel. So if you know of anybody who is a blind CPA, I would love to get their information so we can put together a panel. But to my knowledge, there's only 2 other blind CPAs. So what does that mean? Well, the industry is inaccessible, right? Inaccessible tax software, inaccessible meetings, inaccessible, you name it, everything. It's just how it goes. I mean, yes, there's a lot of blind people work at the IRS, like Foster, right? But what I'm talking about is actually blind CPAs, right? That kind of thing. Do you currently know any blind CPAs, Foster?
No, I do not. But according to federal law, everything should be 508 compliant. So
should be
that is something that you may want to bring to their attention.
Yep.
All that came under being under late President George Bush. He's the one that signed the ADA into law.
Yeah, and again, that's like I said, so if you're a tax software manufacturer and you're listening to this podcast, because I know I've got a few, or you're an accountant, that's most of my audience, make sure your stuff is 508 compliant or accessible. If you don't know what any of those terms mean, well, the best thing is to do some research. Better yet, to talk to someone with a disability like myself or others who are willing to help you make sure your stuff is accessible. In fact, I hope to be doing a talk at the Tax Twitter retreat Basically, it's a retreat where all the people from Tax Twitter are getting together. It's in Denver, Colorado. I'm going to be going there, so I hope to be doing a talk about the diversity and how to help people with disabilities in your tax firm. So just be on the lookout for that. That'll probably be posted on the book site YouTube as well as my personal YouTube, but that will be coming in August. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, so any other things you want to say about that? I don't think so. So I think the last thing of news that I have, I'll probably think of more while I'm trying to think about other things, is Xero. Now, I've talked about Xero before, right? I've talked about Xero being inaccessible. I've also talked about them being not really willing to change. Well, I think something happened because I went ahead and logged into Xero the other day because, QuickBooks and all of its price hikes has been kind of getting my nerves riled up a little bit. And I've just not been very happy. We have a bunch of price increases. We've got a bunch of not being transparent. And of course, we've got a bunch of issues with Intuit as a whole. I'm not going to really do an Intuit bashing podcast, although, of course, in my head, I'd love to, but that's not the goal of my podcast. My goal of my podcast is not to bash companies. But what I want to do is I want to try to figure out some alternatives. Because the other thing that is happening as well is that QuickBooks Live, which is Intuit's proprietary bookkeeping service, is gaining steam. At least that's what I've been told. Now we'll see. But the thing is that I don't want to work with a company who is trying to compete against us accountants. And I know that might be thinking, well, that's just entitlement. No, it's not entitlement. I don't want to work with a company who's trying to compete against me because they're going to try to take all my clients. Well, they're not going to take all my clients, but they're going to take some of my business, right? They're going to take some of them. And so what I want to do is I want to find alternatives like Xero or FreshBooks who believe in not taking our clients and making sure that we are the bookkeeping advisors and not them, right? Because I think that's the issue, is that they try to promote themselves so heavily, but they don't even care about their own accountants. And I just want to take Xero for an example. So Xero is a New Zealand-based company, at least I think so. And they are all about making sure that the accountants are in control. Every accountant partner in Xero has a manager, not really a manager in terms of a boss, but an account sales manager who kind of helps them to make sure that they are on the right track with Xero, getting clients on Xero, all of the above. So I have had a Xero partner manager for a while now. And of course, since I'm in the Texas region, I have Alex. So he's really awesome. And of course, I think that's how some of these feedback has gotten addressed because he's escalated it. So I'm glad that he's around. But, I'm just like, I'm not going to try Xero for a while because I'm just going to use QuickBooks. But of course, no. So I tried Xero the other day and I was very impressed. It was actually very accessible. There's still things that need to be improved, but it was actually pretty accessible. It was accessible enough to the fact where I have actually completely switched my whole firm in terms of my internal books on Xero. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, and I'm going to kind of go into a couple. First thing is that they don't just integrate with their QuickBooks payments. Now, what do I mean? Intuit basically is arrogant, and all they care about is themselves. Imagine that, right? All they care about is integrating with QuickBooks payments. What if I don't want to use QuickBooks payments? What if I find QuickBooks payments annoying, as I do? What am I going to do? Well, I'm just not going to accept online payments. That's going to be a pain, but yeah, no, not doing that. So Xero basically integrates with anything you want, including Chase Pay. Now, why do I care about Chase Pay? Because that's my business bank account. And that makes me very happy because I can get funds same day. Yes, I can get things same day. My money, which is very, very awesome. I don't have to wait 2 or 3 days for the bank to process. Very, very happy about that. That makes me incredibly, grateful that Xero actually cares enough to invest in their payment infrastructure and the bank fees, right? The bank fees don't go down as much. Now, of course, it depends on your bank, but I don't know. My QuickBooks trouble is just kind of getting worse and worse and worse, and I'm excited because Xero is making it more accessible. In fact, I'm going to be getting Xero certified by the end of the week. So I'm going to be going to a Xero webinar on Wednesday and Thursday. And hopefully by the end of Thursday, I'll be certified and a Xero partner advisor. Super exciting. So I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that, Foster? What are your thoughts?
What's interesting is a lot of companies these days, they want you to be in their ecosystem.
Yep.
So that's basically QuickBooks is just another company that's following that model where they're trying to get you to remain totally in their ecosystem. So that's and for some people that might work,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of like you. I kind of like things that are a little more open. So that Xero actually sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good.
It does. And the other thing too is that you can be able to get really awesome plans if you're an advisor too. And I think that, we're just gonna have to explore that because I just wonder what's gonna happen, right? I'll use QuickBooks because I have to use QuickBooks. But I don't know that I'm gonna promote it as much, right? I'm gonna say that QuickBooks is accessible, but I don't know because it's getting kind of less accessible these days, online at least. I don't even use desktop. Don't even ask me about desktop. It's kind of crap, in my opinion. Again, all my audience is probably going to try to, hate me for this, but I've talked about this before. QuickBooks Desktop is just crap. I mean, especially with JAWS, you have to buy a $750 add-on to make it work. Not happening. So,
Yeah, that's expensive.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe you could write it off as a business expense.
I know, but even then, do I really want to spend that money? Because I could bake that $750, do something else, right? I could write it
True.
off all I want, but do I want to spend it? No.
True.
Mhm. Uh-huh. And I also think that FreshBooks, we need to talk about FreshBooks real quick. So FreshBooks has been doing a lot of things. They always do. And I mentioned this before on the podcast, but I remember the time that I went to the FreshBooks meeting in Austin. It was like a year ago. Not even, like last December. And I literally walk in the door and the person's like, "Hi, Taylor." I'm thinking, how do they know my name? This is kind of creepy. Okay, whatever. They're like, "Oh, so I want to talk to you about accessibility." I'm thinking, how do you know my name? Well, it turns out that one of the influencers, she goes by Bookkeeping Side Hustle, Kate Johnson. She actually told FreshBooks that I'd be coming to the Austin meetup and that they should probably start looking at their accessibility. Keep in mind, this is a cited influencer in the community who has nothing to do with accessibility and decided to take it upon herself to tell FreshBooks that I'd be coming on and I'd be coming to the meetup. And ever since then, I've been in really close contact with FreshBooks. I actually got to meet with some of them again this week. So very exciting. They're also trying to make themselves successful. And I think it's very interesting because if you look at where these companies are based out of, you've got FreshBooks in Ontario, and you've got Xero in New Zealand, and then you've got QuickBooks in the US. Well, it's seeming like that Xero and FreshBooks are going to be more accessible than QuickBooks. Very interesting, especially because QuickBooks has been sued before. I don't understand this logic, but you know what? It's just how it is. And I'm not going to complain because that's just going to be how life works, right? You change because you need to. And I think that's going to be kind of how our world works. So before we close, Foster, do you have anything else that we should talk about?
No, not tonight. Not tonight.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This has been a very great episode, folks. So, let me know what you guys think. Let us know, because we're running the thing together now. So let us know what you guys think. And we're going to be introducing some more features very soon. We're going to try to get like a tip jar going. So that'll be cool. And I'm super excited. So with that, everyone, have a great day and talk soon. Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
All right, let me stop recording. Let's stop the stream. Okay, let me stop.